everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for our pilot episode where we're discussing why we decided to start the podcast, Sex, Drugs, and Spirituality, where we're planning on navigating the powers of personal growth and self-discovery through an exploration and acceptance of our shadow selves. But before we dive into our main topic today, let's just take a minute to introduce ourselves. So I'm Elizabeth Maria, and I am so happy to be joining Jackie today for this amazing podcast experience. My company is Elizabeth Maria Unlimited because there is always an infinite number of possibilities. Since 2020, I've been offering clients writing services, whole food health advocacy, and intuitive guidance using sound healing, journaling and scripting, somatic healing techniques, and divination. EM Unlimited helps individuals and organizations align with their best versions through consultation, community collaboration, and coaching services. My work is informed by the healing modalities that I've used in my own healing journey, as well as my background as an English lecturer, social worker, Kave Kanam poet, and vegetarian chef.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth, for that beautiful introduction. I'm so happy and grateful to be sharing this journey with you. And welcome everybody to our pilot episode of our very new podcast, Sex, Drugs, and Spirituality. My name is Jackie Lyons, and I'm a holistic energy healer. I specialize in harnessing the power of the Akashic Records. And as a certified soul realignment practitioner, my goal is to assist my clients into balancing their energy by understanding their karmic cycles. Through this understanding, my intention is for us to identify and label behavior patterns, allowing my clients to step into the fullest extensions of themselves. My experience comes from trauma and the challenges I faced as I learned to navigate and heal these deep-seated wounds. I'm honored and grateful to share what I have learned with each and every one of you today.
Thank you so much, Jackie. So our podcast was born out of our shared need to create a safe space to discuss topics that are often considered taboo in not only mainstream, but in spiritual communities. We're speaking in order to help lessen the stigma and transmute the individual and collective trauma our Western society is experiencing and currently healing. We are lifting the veil on the effects of trauma, both individual and collective, and discuss the healing spiritual modalities we've used to integrate our own shadow traits, born of survival in a world seemingly gone mad.
Throughout our podcast, we will discuss various topics from our own experience, as well as we will present research topics, interviews, as well as reviews. We plan to use this podcast to discuss the various ways traumatic experiences can impact our lives. And we want to really understand how to learn to transmit and integrate these experiences in order to heal ourselves. For our pilot episode, we did want to explain our background and what led us to wanting to create the podcast, Sex, Drugs, and Spirituality. So allow us to take a few minutes to ask each other questions to give you a more in-depth explanation as to our podcast.
Thank you so much, Jackie. So, so basically the format for this podcast will be, we're just, like Jackie said, we're just going to ask each other several questions, kind of get the conversation started. Jackie, do you want me to go ahead and ask your question?
Yes, I'll go ahead and ask you first. And
okay.
Oh, sorry, did you want to go first?
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I'll go ahead and ask you. How about that?
That sounds good.
Okay. So, Jackie, we may need to go back and in our explanations, even, explain what is a spiritual journey to you, and but when during your spiritual awakening journey did you begin to learn about your shadow traits and how to integrate them. And, just for people that really don't have an understanding of what an awakening journey is, you might want to explain that. And also, a little bit about shadow traits if what the heck is it?
Perfect. Well, thank you. It's a large question with
Yeah.
probably an extended answer, but during my spiritual journey was vast. I think I learned very early on that I had a dark side, which can also be referred to as a shadow side or inner demons.
Yeah.
And this was deeply integrated into my childhood. I did not understand at the time how they were created or the full extent as to how that they came to be attached to me. And that took a long time through my journey over the last, I would say, 3 years, that I really learned the depths of what was lying within my shadow. And then to fully integrate them, probably the largest part of the integration process was just over the last 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of where I fit into that bubble. It has been an accelerated learning about the shadow within the last few months, the most profound part of my journey so far. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Yes. Yeah. Well, thank you, Jackie, for explaining that to us. And really, I feel, kind of similar as far as, with my own spiritual journey, that, at the beginning of it's funny because when I also say, the accelerated part, like I feel that I have been on a healing, journey, really since my mid 20s. But during, years and years and years of of inner work, I I wouldn't allow myself to go to those shadow sides. I actually had a mentor once that used to always say to me, everything's good, everything's great, Elizabeth, one day it's just not going to be good and great. And so I stayed at a level that felt comfortable for me. And then fast forward to 2019, where I would say the accelerated part of my spiritual journey began. That was, elemental energy and the giants, and really, beginning to see the patterns of this realm so clearly. And that was when the energy of the shadow side, or the dark side, and honestly I hate to use those dualistic words to describe the experience, but I'll say that that was when I started seeing more of the dark side of things, and some really pretty supernatural ways. Yeah, and so I actually did a shadow work retainer with actually the first male coach that I worked with about a year ago. And that was really the beginning, I think, of learning about and being able to really pinpoint what, my shadow traits were, and beginning to accept these as a part of me instead of trying to run or, exercise them out of my life. Really learning to love and accept, all parts of me. So I think, I'm pretty in tandem with you, probably, about, the last year or so. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's perfect because it leads right into the first question that I had for you, which was, when did you first fully understand that you had a mission in life to work with these, for lack of a better term, darker energies?
Mm-hmm. Um, you know, this is a really interesting question because I have always even though like in my own personal healing journey, I stayed at, I tried to stay in love and light, la la la, just whatever, is just gonna make me happy and joyful. But I've known honestly my entire life that I had a mission to work with these darker energies and to learn how to not only integrate them into my own life, but to help others to do the same. I
Like an
was
inner knowing, you just a deep soul knowing that you had a purpose within that.
Well, I mean, even, as far as me being an advocate for others, like for instance, I mean, I got my first detention in uh first grade for standing up against the bully, right? So I stood up against the bully and I ended up getting in trouble too. But like I always felt a need to be a protector of the underdog or to be a part of that kind of, like I've always felt that I was on the peripheral of things, if that makes sense, and really found my energy kind of in the margins, on the outskirts of things. And so yeah, and so I feel like it was an inner knowing, but also just, through like the different ways that source has guided me, through, I was introduced to tarot in middle school. I really became a big part of kind of the street scene punk rock movement, which I mean, within all organizations, within all movements, where you're going to find your light and your dark or whatever. And again, hopefully further on in this podcast series, we can begin to move away from those terms. Um, but yeah, like, so I always just had a propensity to kind of, move towards kind of the dark side. And I would say that just in the last couple years, I have realized that, my mission is to really go into, maybe dense spaces and shine my light.
Yeah. And I believe that too. And we have so much to unpack under that umbrella that I will leave it there, because we have many and many of episodes that we're going to take to unload pieces of that topic. But thank you for sharing that, Elizabeth, and giving us a little bit of insight into your journey there.
Yeah, absolutely. And and that actually, I mean, great segue into my next question, which is really about, even talking about these shadow traits, which we're still, being pretty general about in this conversation. But when did you begin to feel comfortable talking about your shadow side with others?
So this one's an interesting question, because I've always been a really open communicator. I've never had too many things that I wasn't comfortable talking about, because when something doesn't make sense to me, it's really important for me to pick it apart. And I do that through communication, gauging other people's opinions, and I kind of work in that sense. But once we decided to go ahead and start talking about this on a public forum, it was almost like spirit immediately sped up my healing process and allowed me to put awareness to a bunch of other parts of my shadow that I was avoiding or didn't really realize was affecting me. And like when I said on the previous question, the last 6 months, and kind of the last 6 months as we've been planning to take this step, and that's when I realized that my voice has value, and the experiences that I have gone through have value to other people who have challenges with learning to balance their energy, or some of the bigger topics that we'll get into on especially the next episode, when we start talking about the childhood over sexualization and stuff that comes from that. And that's really when I decided and made a commitment that I am ready to speak about this, that there's nothing in my past that isn't or hasn't led me to this future. And it should be shared in an open way with transparency, without fear of judgment, because that's how we heal and that's how we heal others. And that is kind of why I decided to take the step within those last few months.
That's beautiful. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm honestly right there with you within my own healing journey of, lessening the guilt and the shame and, dissipating that energy that really holds you in, a place of imbalance, right? That, I've often,
100%.
yeah, yeah.
It's so true. And if more people felt comfortable sharing the sides of themselves that they think aren't lovable or are too weird or controversial for the world, they're holding all that to themselves, and there's no healing in that. We have to start to reduce the stigma around these topics so that people can really heal. And yeah, thank you for allowing me to share that.
Mm-hmm.
So for you, the next question is, I'm really interested to know how the failure to acknowledge your shadow self might have hindered your understanding of who your truest version of yourself is. Because as you mentioned in your previous comment, you always knew, but you didn't necessarily acknowledge,
right,
or allow yourself to go down there. So how did that, do you think, might have hindered your process?
Well,
or benefited if it did?
No, this was an interesting question, and I feel that for a long time, even when I was on what I call, a very conscious spiritual healing journey, which again, like I said, really it started like when I was about 23. I think because of the guilt and shame or embarrassment and self-judgment that I had concerning my own shadow side, that I completely separated the two. And I lived pretty much like a double, like sometimes even triple life for like, like
I can
years.
resonate to that.
Yeah, like years. Like, I mean, literally, like, by day I'm like writing my thesis, and by night I'm, hanging out with pimps and hoes, like literally. So, and so I think that, it was a failure of integrating, and it actually, the longer that I lived this double life, where I was ashamed of, the darker sides of me, it's like that part just grew and grew, but, because it like kind of untethered, like, because it didn't have any, I'm trying to like, because I denied it, right?
Mhm.
And so I believe that, in the denial of that side of me, that it's almost like the energies, I mean, all, the energies really, like even the dark, I mean, really, we all want love. We all want love, including, the little pesky dark energies. They want love and understanding. And so the more that I pushed away this part of me, it was like the bigger that it grew, if that makes sense. And so it was really, and so then I'm really not going deep. I'm only seeing like, a part of me in the light, right? And denying the rest. And so, yeah, and so it hindered me in a lot of ways, a lot of ways. Just a lot of crashing and burning throughout my life, feeling, feelings of guilt and shame and self-judgment, a lot of self-abuse, some pretty fucked up shit that I allowed myself to walk through just to try to hide those parts of me. So I believe that I've, just the last couple of years, and I believe that it coincides with the collective healing, like all of this darkness coming up to the surface, that, my own shadow sides and everything have been coming up. And, they're just like, and what just popped in my head, and, is like, we're here, like, we're here. And it's not that we're queer, but, like, we're here and we need to be acknowledged, it's like they refuse to shut up anymore. And so, I finally had to look at them. I had to look at it.
Mm-hmm.
And since being able to look at it and to accept these parts of me, and and not just to accept, but to accept and love and see the beauty in these parts of me, and that they also deserve, the love and the understanding that all the other parts of me do, that I've been able to, come together and feel so much more whole and centered and just at peace with, who I am truly.
That's
As
so
a
beautiful. And I feel a lot the same way, that denying that side of me led to self-destructive behaviors. Now, with the vast amount of awareness I have on it, I can plan certain events where I let my wild or crazy side out a little bit so that it doesn't explode in ways that I don't intend. It kind of mitigate those tendencies by, doing something to, let it free for a little while. And that's really too, the denying of it was so much worse, because it would come out in ways in bad places with the wrong people and, business situations where there was no holding back. And now the integration process is a lot easier. So it did really help to bring me back to wholeness, as you said. Beautiful.
Yeah, it is. It's been a beauty, it is definitely not for the faint of heart. The shadow integration is probably one of the hardest parts of, self-acceptance that I have. Because who wants to look at, the dark side of your
every
being?
bad thing you've ever done in your life listed.
It's a hard pill to swallow, and to and to see it and to accept it and to love it. It's been a process. But that's why we're here, and that's why we are, doing this podcast, and, talking about, these shadow traits, and, the effects of trauma on the psyche, and, on our personalities, and, what we've done. That's why we're doing this. So, just coming up with the title and thinking about, really what we plan to use this podcast for. What does the podcast title, Sex, Drugs, and Spirituality, mean to you?
Well, first of all, I am going to give a moment to give you 100% credit for this title, because when I heard this title, I had shivers all over my body, because what it means to me is the evolution of my journey. It started, and it'll be real straightforward, guys, because we're going to be real straightforward in this podcast. We're not holding anything back. We're laying it all out. My life started by being sexually assaulted as a child, which led to a deep-seated need and use for drugs, which also led me to my lowest point in my life, which then led to the most beautiful spiritual awakening that I have, or it's an energy I've never felt before. And you said it perfectly, it's wholeness. And it's being able to look back and see how that trauma from my childhood affected my sense of security and my sense of connection to myself and my surroundings and the people in my life, which then led to these feelings of being misplaced, the overconsumption of drugs as a form of self-meditation, and then ultimately to pretty much rock bottom, where I finally, in some miraculous moment of inspiration or divine intervention, saw this better future that I really was running from. My fullest potential, my self-worth was shattered. So I was really running from stepping into who I could be. And that's what this title means to me. And it means so much more than that. It encompasses everything. And I know we'll try to get through all of that in the podcast episodes that follow.
Yes.
But I struggle to even express in words the depth of what this podcast and this title means for me. And being able to do it with my best friend, my soul sister, it just, there's nothing that gives me more joy in life than this moment and this project we decided to go in on together. So thank you for giving me the moment too. But I need to know, and I think it's best that everybody knows why, Elizabeth, where did the title come from? And what does it mean to you for your path forward?
Well, just like you said, and I actually love that you said, using drugs to the extreme for meditation, instead of medication, because.
Oh, did I say meditation?
No, but it was perfect.
Oh.
It was perfect because that has also been my experience, is trying to find that stillness, that still small voice, that place where you can just be, right? And that is a meditative state of, just being. And I looked, for synthetic ways of finding that meditative space of being my entire life. I also went through sexual trauma as a young child, and I also really, I used drugs. I mean, drugs and alcohol were my answer to getting to a state, a meditative state, through self-medication, where I could, deal with this crazy fucking world, basically, and so I used sex and drugs for many, many years, and sometimes they worked and were, and I was, and I felt really good and in that state. But like anything exterior from you, it's going to eventually stop working. Because, as we know, and, you guys who are listening to this podcast, I mean, everything is an inside job. Everything is an inside job. So at some point, the exterior, the finding that comfort in men or finding that comfort in a drug, just really stopped working for me. Not that I gave it a damn good shot.
I gave him a full effort. Like, I tried to stay a drug addict. It didn't fucking let me. It's true. I feel the same way too. Like, I tried to escape, but the light kept calling me back. And thank ISIS that happened, because my goodness, I'm terrified to think where I would be if I didn't.
And it's and I've also, again, being someone who has always kind of leaned towards the darker side of things. I have, in my research and studies, I have researched the history of drug use and our culture. I've always been just fascinated by different underground, communities of individuals. And so, it's just a fascinating topic to me. I always, sometimes, like, one of my sayings is, even the bird seeks out the fermented berry, so what is about...
Need some drunk squirrels in the tree. I'll tell you that. They get a little rough.
So what is it about, these exterior things that our society deems as, unworthy or, bad or whatever. What is it that makes us as humans or, animals or whatever still continuously want to seek it out, So I'm
Oh, I
curious.
love it because you're just getting into everything that this show is about with that
Yes.
sentence.
Yes. And so, from my own personal evolution, sex and drugs have been a huge part of my life. And just like you said, when I hit my proverbial bottom, it was, spirituality. I started on and the spiritual path, it came to me too. I did not really seek it out. It has come to me through signs and synchronicities from, I mean, really a very, young age. So to me, for my own personal path, it all mixes, seamlessly, the sex, drugs, and spirituality. And also collectively, we think of, our Western society and how taboo sex and drugs are in our society, though I mean it's like everyone wants to know about it, even though
Yeah.
yeah, so to me,
Beautiful. Well, thank you
yeah.
so much. And
Mhm.
thank your brain for the beautiful title because it definitely hit a chord with me the second I heard it. And it was just couldn't have been any other name for us. And
Well,
you guys, you don't even know where it's going. There's so
I,
much we are going to get into within the topics of sex, drug, and spirituality that we can't begin to explain it all in this pilot episode. So
absolutely. I mean, there's just so, just within just sex or just drugs or just, but I think that what we're going to end up seeing as this podcast, moves forward is really looking at the interplay between these three topics. And again, what our ultimate goal is with this podcast is for us to integrate these energies for us personally and to also help other people to learn how to integrate the darker energies, the shadow side energies, so we can get to that place of wholeness, of accept pure 100% acceptance of who we are in this moment, in this carnation, without that guilt, shame, self-judgment, really learning how to be without all the exterior markers that we have placed on ourselves for so long. So
great. I love it. And I can't wait to continue to dive into all these topics with you. It's really been soulful for me. And as I said, my integration journey is continuing through this experience with you, and it's vastly improving. So we know we're on the right path, and we can't wait to continue to bring awareness to these topics.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so, I think that that's a pretty good overview of why we decided on the title, what we plan on doing. And yeah, I am, equally just so excited for this journey. And it's taken me, and I get, Great Spirit Source always brings to you what you are ready to do, and I know that I have been preparing for this and to be able to speak my truth around these subjects for a long time. And what better co-host to do this with than my wonderful, beautiful Jackie Lyon. So I am just, it is.
I'm so excited. And exactly. And friends, we are going to be launching new videos each Friday night at 11 p.m. on Spotify. So make sure to go ahead and click that follow button, click the like. If there's a bell, click that bell so you get notified each and every time we launch a new video. And we just can't, I don't even know what else I could say, Elizabeth. Anything else you want to say before we're wrapping up today's episode, our first episode?
I think that, I just want to say that I'm excited just to see the progression of, this journey with you. And, thank you for, Thank you for being you, Jackie. And I feel very safe being able to talk to you about, some of these topics. So I'm excited to see how it all unfolds.
Me as well. It's an open, judgment-free space, and we will implement that with any of our guests, any of our comments that come in. We will have that same mentality as we hope to help you guys integrate your shadow into your own experience.
Absolutely. Yeah. So thank you all so much for joining us today while we discussed why we created our podcast, Sex, Drugs, and Spirituality. Know that your comments and perspectives are truly important to us. So please reach out. And if you have any questions for us to explore on our show or any other questions concerning our podcast, contact us at Sex, Drugs, and Spirituality podcast at gmail.com.
Yes, and if you'd like to contact us or about individual client offerings, you can definitely click the link below. That'll take you to our landing page. Each of our personal businesses will be listed there if you want to reach out to us individually. But we do look forward to connecting with our spiritual community. So don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button so we can see you every Friday night at 11 p.m. Take care, friends. We'll see you in the next episode.
Bye.
Bye.
Sex, Drugs, and Spirituality Podcast. Elizabeth Maria, Unlimited LLC. And Jackie Lyons of Akashic Energy Healing is not responsible nor liable for any advice, course of treatment, diagnosis, or any other information, services, or products that you obtain through this website.